Good evening. This is really a good crowd. I've never seen anybody settle down so quickly, so congratulations. I'm Mark Lurie, part of the foundation at Torrance, and first of all, I want to thank the Miracle of Living group. They're all here, and who do this. They've been doing this for years, even when I was younger, and I'm proud to be part of it now, and I want to congratulate them for, I think, setting up a pretty hot program now. And don't get the wrong idea, I wore this tie, but this isn't just a Trojan type of thing. But before I get going, I just want to have a shout out. There's a pretty fierce Trojan watching this on Zoom, and I want to say hello to Ralph Allman, who's watching this, and fight on, Ralph, keep it going. So we have a great program. It's about aging, and I have to admit, when I first heard about this, my response to anything about aging is total denial. But I think they had some good ideas, and I think you're going to really learn a lot and make it a very pleasant experience. We have some really, really phenomenal guests. I know them all. I've known them all for years, and I'll be able to introduce them, and give you some history about each one. Nothing too personal. But our first guest I was just talking to is Anna Malor. And Anna, she came into practice much after I did. But she was always the doctor that, sort of a doctor's doctor. And I knew, she was always learning. She was, if I talked to her, she had been to this conference and still practicing heavily, but she's never stopped learning. I spoke to her about this. She's always in the forefront. And that's kind of the ideal doctor. The difference of her instead of many of us, she's very pleasant. I don't know where she learned that because I didn't get that in medical school, but there's nothing, never do I hear a negative word, and that's from patients, other doctors. So Anna went to UC Irvine, graduated anteater, but she's trained, even though we accept this, at UCLA, and she came into practice here. She'll tell you the year because I'm not going to go into ages, but she's been very successful. She's truly an integral part of the Torrance Memorial community. So Anna.
Thank you, Dr. Lurie. I've been here over 30 years, so yes, it does age me quite a bit. So thank you for inviting me to speak on a topic that I actually feel very passionately about. If any of my patients are here, this will probably be very redundant. I really live this in my practice on a day-to-day basis. So our discussion tonight is really on aging. And so as I was going through and looking at the different definitions of aging, the one that I think works best for me and the one that I use with my patients is the last one, the inevitable progressive deterioration of physiologic function with increasing age. So we're all gonna age. That's just part of being human. And so the question is, how do we do it well? How do we do it and still enjoy our lives and not feel like we are deteriorating in our older years? So this book was my inspiration years ago. It came out and was on the New York bestseller list, Younger Next Year. And Chris Crawley and Henry Lodge, one of their quotes is as follows. They say, "There's a critical distinction between aging and decay that you need to keep in mind from here on in. Aging is inevitable, but it's biologically programmed to be a slow process. Most of what we call aging and most of what we dread about getting older is actually decay. That's crucially important because we are stuck with real aging, but decay is optional." And I love that quote because it gave me permission to see that we have some control over the actual aging process. There are things that we get to take some control over. There's a lot of things that we don't get any control over, and those are the genetics. You know, we're kind of programmed genetically, our biology. The things that we do get to control, however, are nutrition, exercise, sleep, the environmental toxins, which include, you know, all the way from all the radiation we're exposed to alcohol, nicotine, occupational exposures if we worked in the coal mines, et cetera. And then the things that are a little softer, which are the relationships, learning, purpose, and passion. Dr. Bartner is going to be speaking to us about this tonight because we are recognizing how important that is in our aging process, and attitude. I'm going to just mention attitude real quick here because I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but these are the things that can change at any point in our lives, either young or you know, in our later years. But it's gratitude, resiliency, forgiveness, and humor. And there's actually really good science that these qualities that either we learn or we have inherently do affect how old we live. When you look at those individuals that live into their hundreds, these are qualities that almost all of them have in common. So I love the Blue Zone. Some of you guys may have seen the documentary that came out, and it's basically learning about those groups that live well into their hundreds, and the things that they all have in common with some variation. We have one actually here in California, and it's the Loma Linda group here in Southern California. So the things that most of these older individuals have in common is they all move naturally. They don't have gyms necessarily, but they all move in the course of their day, whether it's housework, walking up the hill to go pick up their grandchildren from school, whatever it is, but they move naturally throughout the day. They have integrated ways to manage their stress. They all have a reason to get up in the morning. Again, we don't tend to live in multiple generations, but if we did, you know, grandma helps take care of the grandchildren, and, you know, mom can go to work or what have you, but all of us have a purpose, and so you don't stop feeling like you're useful just because you're retired. Nutrition is a big part of it. You know, we are eating a lot of processed foods and convenience foods, and I'm noticing in my practice that the older we are, the more retired we are, the less we really want to cook. We've been doing it for so many years, and so we tend to eat out more, and we don't get to control really what we're eating. There's a lot of processed foods and a lot of high fats in the foods that you get when you go out to restaurants. So, you know, eating more from the earth, and we'll talk about that, and being able to control some of the ingredients that you're putting in your food. I put wine in there because some of the blue zones, you know, wine is a very positive part of that aging process, but I'm going to guess that there are other factors that are playing a role, and just having that glass of red wine by itself may not necessarily correlate with longevity. And then obviously your family, your sense of belonging, and I call it being part of a village, whether that's your village in the middle of you know, Africa, or your neighborhood, or your church village, or your work village, or what have you. So this is how I usually introduce it to my patients. Every patient gets this little introduction, and I bucket it, because this is how I bucket it in my mind, which is the mind, body, and spirit. So in the body part, it's the nutrition, the exercise, and sleep. In the mind part, I say, do you have a village? Who are your people? Who's your support system? Are you suffering from depression, anxiety? Those are going to play a role. Let's work on this. And then the part that I think we have lost as a country, and most countries that have longevity really, it's important to them culturally, is the spirit. And whether you're from India or from Japan or from the mountains of Italy, Loma Linda, there's a spiritual component that I think we need to tap into, whatever that is, to help regulate some of the stress, the lack of social connection, et cetera. So from a nutrition standpoint, this is in your little packet there, but we just want to eat from the rainbow. So when you look at your plate, make it as colorful as possible, get as many fruits and vegetables as you can. Helene is going to talk a little bit about protein, but we now recognize that we aren't getting enough healthy proteins in our diets, and as we get older, we actually need more protein than we did when we were younger. And a good rule of thumb, and your doctor can help you calculate this, is about 1.5 grams per kilo. For many, many years, Dr. Lurie and I, we learned it was 0.7 grams per kilo, and that has changed. We really recognize that loss of muscle mass as we get older is so important to balance, fall risk, just metabolism, et cetera. And so our goals are to keep our healthy proteins, and that's not, eating a prime rib steak every night, but our healthy proteins to about 1.5 grams per kilo. We want to eat again from the rainbow, and we want to try to get as many of the phytonutrients, which are these colorful vegetables. So this is another picture of that, just eat the rainbow. This is how we teach our kids now, eat from the rainbow. This is what my plate most of the time looks like, but this is what our plates should look like. Half the plate, because I don't count stuff, I don't measure things, I just visually, half the plate is your vegetables, a couple of fruits a day. A quarter of your plate is something brown that might be a starch, and a quarter of our plates is a lean protein. So chicken, fish, beef, vegetarian a couple times a week with some legumes, beans, nuts and seeds. Just if you don't understand the ingredients, if it comes from a package, if it's processed, probably not the best thing. So just if it looks like it came out of the earth and Mother Nature made it, then it's probably good for you. Okay? So I'm gonna just introduce exercise as a whole, but Helene is going to talk to you about exercise and balance. I just summarized, just so you had it for your slides, just some ways to do functional exercise. And I'll just introduce functional exercise is the things that we have to do from a strengthening standpoint or from an exercise standpoint that allows us to do the things we want to do. So whether it's, being able to cook and lift your heavy pans, whether it's being able to go up and down the stairs, whether it's being able to walk down the street or get up off the floor if you fall, et cetera. So that's what I mean by functional exercise. And then these are just some ideas. Whoopsie daisy. So Helene is gonna take that over. Do you wanna introduce Helene? Yeah. I'll come back.
I guess I didn't get the memo, but I'm going to introduce Helene Lopes, another doctor. And as I told Dr. Bartner, he and Helene are doctors, Anna and I are doctors. But we're allowed to make reservations and get ahead in the restaurants. Unfortunately, at this point, they can't do that, but I admire them. Helene Elaine, I've known, it goes back to 1980. Maybe I was your babysitter or whatever it was, but it goes back to my initial days at USC. She was a physical trainer for the athletic department. And, you know, I was a cardiologist. No team in the world has a cardiologist on the field, but I attribute my luck to getting to be part of that program because Elaine always protected us. And when Barbara and I went to the dinner, she got us our seats, and I've appreciated that. And then she went on, got her PhD, but she's always been a part of my family just because of all she's done for us. She, believe it or not, went to UCLA for a little while, but she got her her bachelor's degree at USC and her PhD, and she went at USC, became an exercise physiologist. She was also an integral part of the athletic department while she was working there. Her husband, also a football player, played up in Oregon. Her son played football for USC. And so they've all been part of the family. And she now is still teaching at USC. And she's kind of the person we need to blend with Anna's lecture to tell us how can we perform exercise without wearing some kind of thong and having a water bottle and going to a gym. And I think that's going to be her expertise. I want to thank Anna, and I think with her talk, and she'll talk again, that talk should go out to the doctors as well, because these are things we weren't taught when I went to school, and that this is really an education for everybody. But now, talking about exercise, Elaine.
Well, that was quite an introduction. Thank you. You didn't mention my daughter. She didn't play sports. That's why. Okay. But she is going to have a baby, so that's good. Okay. Welcome. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to speak tonight. And I'm going to talk a little bit about exercise. And hopefully exercise doesn't scare you. How many of you exercise? Yay. Okay. That's why you're here. Okay. And I think we all have a different definition of exercise. Just as Dr. Malore said, why do we exercise? Well, it's about being functional. And in athletics, it's also about being functional. So if I have a pitcher and I need to stretch him, and I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, well, this arm has to go all the way here because it's going to pitch, right? But this arm doesn't have to, then I'm going to go ahead and stretch this arm to here. I'm not going to do this arm because then it'll come out of its joint, and we don't want that. So everything has a purpose. But when you're in sports, or when you like to hike or you like to bike, you pay attention to yourself. You exercise because you want to be able to do that activity. But I think what we forget is when you're not riding the bike and hiking, when you're just getting up every morning and you may be going for a little walk or cooking or doing whatever you're doing or picking up grandchildren or doing anything, we forget that that also takes training. We lose everything because we don't train for daily activities or our functional activities. As Anna said, we basically train because we have some goal, like to hike a mountain. And that's not your goal right now, is whatever it is. And it should be to get up in the morning, get out of bed, be able to stand up, be able to do whatever it is, wherever point you are in your life. And there are exercises to do that. You don't just automatically do that. So it's really important to pay attention to that. Why do we exercise? Decrease in function with age leads to, and I have to have slides because I'm a teacher, so I have to do that, the visual thing, so excuse that. I'll have a few definitions and then hopefully not bore you too much, but decrease in function with age leads to a change in independence and quality of life. That's what it does. We all of a sudden decide we don't need to exercise, or we don't want to, or it's too far to go to the gym, and if I don't do this whole big thing, then I'm not going to, I don't want to exercise. It's just too much of a commitment. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be a state of mind. So focus should be on mobility. One of the things we do is we lose range of motion because we don't need to do certain things anymore. So all of a sudden we think, and I'll talk about actually frozen shoulder in a second, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. Self-care, you want to be able to take care of yourself. You don't want to have somebody there having to help you get from room to room or walk outside or do what you want to do. So self-care is part of this type of exercise. Leisure pursuits, you golf, you sit down and do a puzzle. That's your leisure pursuit, but you got to be able to sit down and do the puzzle. You got to be able to bend over, and you got to be able to do those things. You have to have the mobility in your hands to put the pieces in. So it really is what you want to do. And then any activities, if you're still working or if you're volunteering, you're running around, you're doing all those things. So it just depends who you are when you decide what you're going to do for exercise. The most important thing is small improvements can make major changes. And I think once we stop, maybe it's because of an injury, maybe it's for whatever reason, we don't feel, we put on some weight, whatever. Once we stop, we think now we can't do all that. So now what am I going to do? No, you don't have to do all that. I mean, a good example is my mom, she's 90, going to be 95, and she goes to Pilates. And I went, you go to Pilates? And she does this twice a day. And the reason why is because the person who teaches her Pilates looks at her when she's not feeling right and doesn't actually have to do a million Pilates exercises. What she does is she says, oh, your shoulder's not working right. Let's do this exercise. So what she's doing is getting her the range of motion back. And somebody's got their eyes on her, so to know that she's not just sitting at home. And so this Pilates instructor is more of a person, I'm not gonna say an occupational therapist, but a person who's looking at her and saying, oh, let's make this better with this little exercise. Not this whole group of Pilates exercises that might be way too overwhelming. So there's always reasons, and you just need to look at what you need for yourself. Okay, so the definitions here. Osteoporosis, which we talked about last night a little bit, is a medical condition in which bones become brittle and fragile from loss of tissue, typically as a result of hormonal changes, which happen to all of us, deficiency in calcium, which may happen in your diet, or vitamin D. Osteoporosis exercises include anything that's weight-bearing. The weight-bearing exercises are that force a person to move against gravity while staying upright. These place stress on the bones, which can maintain or improve bone density. Wolff's Law says if you put stress on bones, it's going to go ahead and get stronger. If you don't put enough stress on bones, let's say you're going up and you're an astronaut and you have no gravity, then you're going to lose tons of bone density. If you put too much on it, the bone's going to break. So who are you? Do you have osteoporosis? Do you need to not put that much weight bearing? What do you need to do? And that's where your doctors help you a lot, is they teach the bone density tests. All these things tell you where your risk is so that you can do weight bearing. But if you don't do weight bearing exercises, then how are you going to do your daily activities unless they're all laying in bed? So basically, or sitting. So you need to do these things. And all that does is keep your bones going. But again, we forget to do things. When we don't have a purpose or a hiking trip, we forget to do it. The National Osteoporosis Foundation recommends doing 30 minutes of weight-bearing cardio exercise 5 to 7 days per week. You can do 3 10-minute sessions if you want. You could do, I know people now that are my age who do yoga for a half hour, do some sort of exercise, and that's it, and they look amazing. So you don't have to, again, the time commitment, just do this and make sure that you can get, so 10 minutes 3 times a day is not too much to commit to your health. You can do high impact exercises, but again, what if you have injuries, old injuries, or you have osteoporosis, or you have something where you can't do as much high impact, things like high impact aerobics, dancing, climbing stairs, running. So if that doesn't work, then start with low impact. And what you would do would be, again, low impact aerobics, fast walking, elliptical machines, because again, you're in a machine, so you don't have to have all of that the same exercise as high impact. They advise doing strengthening exercise 2 to 3 times a week, which includes weightlifting, body weight exercises, for example, push-ups, your body weight, non-body weight exercises, swimming, cycling. So again, whatever works for you and whatever you have in your environment or your world that you can actually do. Start slowly and gradually, and then increase intensity. My rule of thumb is do something you've never done before, and then see if you're sore the next day. And if you are sore, that's okay. Wait another day and then increase the intensity. But if you can do things and it doesn't hurt you to do them you wait till the next day, because basically what happens is your body doesn't really get inflamed until you fall asleep, and it has time to get inflamed. It has all these little areas to seek into. Most of the time you're walking, you don't feel any pain, and then all of a sudden, it's the same with an injury. Everything blows up. You go, I was great yesterday, I kept playing, I was fine. The next morning, now I can't walk. Well, it's because the area got inflamed. And it did that because you were sleeping and it had time to do that. And so it's the same thing with muscles. You may not see the inflammation, but they get slightly inflamed. If you worry about it, you can ice afterwards, things like that. But the most important thing that you do is you do one thing and you do it at low level. You see if it bothers you. If it doesn't hurt you the next day, then you add either more reps, you add more weight, you add things day to day. But if you do too much in one day, you're never going to know that you couldn't have done that small amount. Does that make sense? So small increases are okay. We got time. You have time every day to do a little bit of exercise. So it's important. Only do those exercises that can be performed safely. Every one of you is different. Some of you can stand on one foot all day long. Some of you will never stand on one foot right now because you ankle injuries, foot injuries, flat feet, whatever it is, it's happened to you over years. So that's okay, but you need to work on those things. And then obviously considering any of your pre-existing conditions, if you have a heart problem or whatever, you're going to be different. That's why I don't like handing people a bunch of exercises, because I don't know who you are and I don't know what you should and shouldn't be doing. So I don't want to set it up that way, but very willing to answer any questions if you want to talk about specific exercises. The other thing is sarcopenia, which you don't hear about as much, but that's a loss of muscle mass specifically related to aging. So as Dr. Malloy said, she talked about protein and how it is important in your diet, because what we do is we atrophy for different reasons, partially because we're not doing something. And it's the same as bone. If you exercise it, it gets stronger. And if you don't exercise it, it gets weaker. And if you exercise it too much, it tears. So you just have to have that balance. And it's again, you have to figure that out for yourself. Basically, people gradually begin losing muscle mass and strength sometimes in their 30s or 40s. And so we call 30s or 40s aging, okay? So don't feel like it's like oh, I'm talking about 60-year-olds. No, 30 or 40s. The process picks up between the ages of 65 and 80. So now you know, I don't want these muscles to atrophy. What do I do? Let me look in a book and just see how I do. Do I do some calf raises? Do I do some, literally bicep curls. You could do 3 sets a day with little weights and you would be making all the difference in the world. And people just don't know that. They don't know that. So you need to really consider that. Any resistance-based muscle training exercises. And then she said diet deficient in protein may also be a cause, and that's something that's more in research now. So mobility, range of motion, one of the things we lose is our ability, our flexibility, all right? And so it's important that if you're going to stretch and you want to keep your muscles where they should be and you want to keep your joints where they should be, you always warm up a little bit. If you have weight-bearing issues, then if you got a little bicycle, you don't have to spend a lot on a stationary bike, but something where you can just get the swelling out of all your joints and get yourself loosened up, then you're a lot better stretching, because you want to stretch muscles, you don't want to stretch joints, because that really doesn't work. Low intensity stretch may be more comfortable, which is fine. Long duration required to gain a more permanent change. So this is where, if I say, this is not what you practice when you get home, I'm not going to make you do it tonight. He said, don't make them stand up. That's what you said, so I'm not making them stand up. But one of the things that you do is just sit down and try to reach for your toes and see how far you go. Hit your knees, maybe the middle of your leg, and step back up, and then reach again, then sit back up. And we do this with the athletes. You're not going to get anywhere. But if you sit there long enough, there's these things called muscle spindles that when you start to stretch too much, it makes the muscles tighten. Then you've got Golgi tendon organs, which what they do is they finally go, look, I'm tired of tightening up here, I'm gonna relax. And so what you do is you hit a certain point and it hurts, and then all of a sudden it doesn't hurt so much anymore. So you go a teeny bit farther and you go, okay, now it's starting to pull again. And then all of a sudden about 30 seconds later, it doesn't. If you do this for 5 minutes, watching TV, whatever, listening to a podcast, whatever you want to do, by the time the 5 minutes is up, you've actually gone almost to your feet. Try it, just try it. Because what's happened is you've let the muscle relax, but every time you reach and go, you don't ever give it a chance to relax, and so you never get that flexibility. So if you want a really permanent change in a muscle, you can sit there and do that, like I said, while you're listening to something or whatever. That's how you have to do it. You have to give yourself a chance to do that. That's why bopping up and down and all that a lot of times can hurt muscles. So that's what long duration may be required. Everyone has their own range of motion, flexibility limitations. Don't try to be something you're not. We'd all like to be able to zip in the back and do certain things like this. And you know what? If you do that every single day, just do this and this, then you're going to keep it. But if you don't do it, then you're not going to keep it. So it doesn't take all that. You just need to do those actions every day, which is something I'll address in 1 second. Different activities require different levels of flexibility. So again, it's up to you. I brought up the picture. This arm has to be all the way out to here. This arm only has to be to here. So that's what you have to kind of think that way. So I was going to ask this question, but it's already on there. Leading cause of injury in older population is falling. All right, that's the leading cause of injury. I'm not talking about heart disease or anything like that. I'm talking about that injury, orthopedic injuries. Okay, so how do we prevent that as opposed to falling? And there's 2 things that really affect our balance. One of them, there's this area of things that affect your balance, which would be somatosensory, just basically provides information from the orientation of your body parts to another and to support your system. So that sounds like a lot of words, but basically that just says if I'm standing on something or if I step in a hole, my brain tells me to react and not fall That's me. I need to practice doing that. So I need to develop my somatosensory. And I'll give you, that's why we do balance exercises. You need to train your body to react to stepping in a hole or stepping off a curb or doing something. And this is, again, things that we even have athletes do these days. Vestibular angularity to your head in relation to inertial space. So now we're talking more what you would talk about, but this has to do with your inner ear. So I don't, we talk about hearing and dementia. Well, I'm also thinking, your inner ear, things happen, and that will throw off your balance. That's when people get seasick or whatever, they take Dramamine. So it's important. Some people may take Zofran or something to get that nausea feeling out of you, but your inner ear is important. So if you're finding that you're off balance, maybe have your doctor actually check and see what's going on there, because that can be also affecting you. Vision, really, really important. So another thing I would have had you do, but I'm not, is that you stand up. What I want you to do is stand up and just you go on one foot and see how long you can hold it there, and then close your eyes. But have a table next to you, have something to hold on to. But you'll see how important vision is to your balance. And so again, we start to lose some of our eyesight, we start to lose some vision. All of a sudden now we've lost another component between our inner ear and our eyes. We've lost this component that allows us to balance better. So it's not just getting old, it's actually things that are happening in our bodies. So we can get glasses, we can work on our vision, we can do certain things to help that. And then the last thing is muscle coordination. So that's one of those things, again, we can work on that. We can work on coordination of muscles. What do you think athletes do every day? They wouldn't be athletes if they didn't practice and train every single day. And why do they practice and train? Is so that they can do things without thinking about it. Well, you want to be able to walk without thinking about it. They want to be able to play a basketball game or do whatever, or make a tackle. They want to do it without thinking about it. So they train every single day doing the same thing. So if you take balance exercises and you stand on both feet, okay, I can do that. And then I close my eyes. Okay, I can do that for a minute. Now I'm going to stand on one foot. See how long I can do that, maybe a minute. And then, okay, what can I do next? Well, the next thing is close my eyes. Like I said, make sure you're holding on to something in case you're going to fall. If you can do that for a minute, now you've trained your balance system, your somatosensory system. You've actually trained it to be aware of what's going on when you can't see something that happens. So that helps that component, okay? And then you say, well, now how am I going to make it more difficult? Well, get something, take a pillow, or you can get one of those foam things, whatever, that makes your balance go off. And now try to stand on one foot on that and see how long you can hold that and hold that for a minute. Again, these are just easy things you can do. And then again, close your eyes and see how long you can do that. And if you can get that up to a minute, you've now created the situation where you're really helping your balance because your brain is learning how to react. And then the best thing you do is you stand on one foot and you have your grandchild throw a ball at you and you try to catch it. You're standing on one foot. You don't close your eyes for this one. And then you try to catch it, and then you go, and they keep throwing you off balance, but you keep recovering. That's going to train your body. When you step in a hole or you get misbalanced somewhere, it's going to train your brain to say, okay, we need to react. And that's all that does. And that's all we do. We train ourselves to do things that we don't want to have to think about because we don't have time to think about it when we fall. We want to be able to know to put a leg out at the other one if you're about to fall. You don't want to fall on your arm and dislocate your shoulder. So you can train your body that way. And then the other thing is forward flexion. This kind of happens as we get older, and I don't know if any of you noticed it, we kind of go into this. All right, and it only takes like 1 or 2 degrees for us really to be off balance. You don't realize how much pressure that is just going forward a teeny bit. So you think, okay, now what do? Well, we need to stand up straight. So how do you stand up straight? Every single morning when you get up, do retraction. Every single day, squeeze your scapulas together 3 times, 10 times, 3 times a day. Whatever it is, just keep doing that because if you keep those working, then you have your posture. All right, and then stretch these. And so basically they say kyphosis or curvature of the spine is one of that happens when you start to turn 50 and older. It's actually between 30 and 79, basically shows that we get osteoporosis, we get all sorts of things because we're not working on our spine. So it's really important to be able to stand straight, and you can't do it all day long, but if you just do those exercises every day, then you know you're working the muscles. And as long as you work them, they're going to be able to keep your posture. Okay, frozen shoulder. Any of you ever had a frozen shoulder?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, you. Okay, shame on you. It's called adhesive capsulitis. Basically what it means is that, and this is kind of a good example of a lot of different areas of our body, but it's the one that happens the most. Why do we see this in the older population? It's either a chronic injury, tendonitis over time, or you tore your rotator cuff. You fell, you did something weird, you tore your rotator cuff. So what happens with older people? A lot of times they don't seek care. Part of it's because of insurance. Part of it is I can't see the doctor for 2 months. Part of it is I don't have the time. It's not a big deal. I can do this and this and this. So why do I have to worry about it? I'll just let it heal. What happens? It scars down. And so you've left your shoulder in this position, not going any higher than this, for a couple months till you finally say, and you're like, I can wash my hair, okay, that's good. And I can reach in the cupboard, but what I'm doing instead of reaching in the cupboard like this, is I'm going like this. I'm shrugging like this. And now I'm causing a lot of back problems because I'm shrugging, because shrugging helps you get there. And when I wash my hair, okay, I'm gonna do this. Well, all of a sudden you can't do that anymore because the scar tissue is building and building and building. And then you say, okay, now what do I do? Well, now I can't get there, so now I'm gonna go to the doctor. Well, now the doctor's looking at you saying, you need surgery. We need to tear all that up. And it's not a fun thing to do, to get range of motion back that way. It's really not. And all you had to do every single day when you tear that rotator cuff, if you don't want to go to the doctor, you don't want to do it to prevent a frozen shoulder, is if you take a shower, that helps because the warm water always makes us feel better, is hold like this and walk up and down the wall on this thing because you're touching the shower wall. So if you can't lift it because you tore your rotator cuff, they have ladders and stuff in PT clinics where they let you walk up there. Find something that you can grab onto, hold this down so you're not shrugging. And if you do that every single day, it's not gonna freeze. It's just not gonna freeze. So you may not be able to get the doctor right away, but don't let that happen. Don't let you lose your range of motion because you just said, oh, I'll take care of it in a few months. So does that make sense? Yeah. All right, and we like the shower because the shower is warm, it makes your neck feel good. But again, that turns into neck problems and all sorts of things. So I brought that up because I think it's really important because we compensate and compensate till we can't do what we can do naturally, and then all of a sudden it becomes a much bigger problem. So prevent it, daily range of motion. Just make sure you're doing what you need to do. You got the full range of motion. Core exercises are kind of the last thing I'll talk about. It's really important to keep your stomach muscle strong. I think you've learned that forever. Lower extremities strong, upper extremities. You notice how when people pick up things right, they bend their legs and they do what they're supposed to do, but it's a lot easier just to bend over, right, and pick it up. Well, let's say it's not something heavy. Let's say it's a towel. More people throw their backs out picking up a towel than they do picking up weights. Why? Because the amount of pressure on your spine every time, for every degree you go forward, is tremendous. And we don't know it because we're like, oh, this is easy, I can do this. So I bend over and I do it. Well, now my back goes out because my trunk weighs too much. It's the same as your neck. You think, okay, well, my neck is fine. So I'm sitting there, I don't know how many of you text, but even writing, just a few degrees forward puts a ton of strain on your neck. But we have trained ourselves not to have a problem with that until we have a neck problem. Now what happens? Your head weighs like 10 to 15 pounds. So now all of a sudden you slept wrong and now you can't move your neck. And so again, it's all about keeping these muscles strong and your leg muscles in your arms. And if you think about it, like if you're lifting a weight and it's too heavy, instead of doing this, instead of just lifting, what do? You shrug like this to do it. The same with your legs. When you lift a weight on a machine or whatever, if you can't do it, the first thing that happens is your back extends. And so this is where they came up with the Swiss ball. How many of you have ever been on one of those big round balls, sitting on those? And the reason why they did that is because you avoid spine extension when you're on the ball. So if I'm trying to sit on the ball at my desk, which is probably one of the best things you probably could do to keep your posture, it's very minimal exercise, but what it does is it keeps you straight, because if you back starts to sway a little bit, or your head starts to sway, you fall off the ball. So you're not doing that much work, but what you're doing is constantly firing your core muscles enough so that you have good posture. So people do exercises on the ball. You don't have to do all of those dead bugs and all that kind of stuff, because dead bugs are the exercise y'all start with. That should be dying bugs because you're moving. So it's not really a dead bug, but you're lying on your back. But that's why Swiss balls work. And then something like Pilates keeps a person that knows about exercise watching you. And that person is going to say to you, even if it's just minimal, say, look, I really can't do all this today. They're going to say, you know what, I see something wrong with your shoulder. I think you need to see a doctor. But you got somebody on the lookout for you when you take these classes. It's not just exercise. I think that's it. Yes, because if I haven't put you to sleep, she's going to talk about sleep, then all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Helene. So actually, I want to circle back to something Dr. Lurie said, which I think is very pertinent to this talk and to my medical colleagues. I trained in internal medicine, and in internal medicine, as with many of these specialties, we learn how to diagnose disease and how to treat disease. And in the course of my practicing, I realized that because, if I'm going to really promote preventive practices, I needed to understand why diseases occurred. And so a few years ago, I started to get more interested and better trained in what we call lifestyle medicine. And lifestyle medicine incorporates everything that we're talking about today within the primary care field, internal medicine, family medicine, and also a lot of the specialty groups. So what we're trying to do is identify the things really early on in life that we can affect, that we can change, and we can do something about. And it's interesting because as physicians, we actually probably have the worst eating habits, exercise habits, sleep habits. We are all sleep deprived. Our cortisol levels and stress is off the charts. We don't have time to engage in social activities and engage in things that are going to be good for our mental health because we're working all the time. And so as physicians, we're not always the best examples of what good lifestyle medicine is about, but I think that we're trying to incorporate that more and more in our own lives, and then hopefully translate that to our patients, whether it's in specialty practice. We should be all hearing this same messages from our primary doctors, from our cardiologists, from our pulmonologists, from our orthopedists. We all should be saying the same thing. So one of the other pillars of lifestyle medicine that does affect aging is sleep. How does that happen? So sleep, I say sleep is the street sweeping phase of the day. That's when the body gets to do all of the repair of the cells that have experienced stress, trauma, the hamburger we ate for lunch, the argument we had with our spouse, whatever it is, all that stress from the day gets kind of cleaned up while we're sleeping. So when you give your body enough time to sleep, we restore brain function. We know that people that sleep well have less Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease. So sleep is super important in terms of repair. It helps with the immune system and inflammation. So if you're coming down with a cold, what does your mom tell you to do? Go get extra sleep. It helps the body restore the immune function. It improves heart health. It keeps our blood sugars more consistent. So we know that individuals that don't get a lot of sleep are more prone to insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is one of the risk factors for cardiovascular disease and for Alzheimer's. So we're recognizing the influence of insulin resistance, not just on cardiovascular health, but also on brain health. Helps with memory and helps control weight. So they've actually correlated that people that sleep long and well actually can maintain their weight better because their cortisol levels are not swinging up and down all the time. And they're fewer hours awake when they're not eating. So these are the things that I just wrote here that might help you get a better night's sleep. Moving and exercising during the day will help you sleep better. Avoiding alcohol. Many of us don't do well with alcohol, especially as we get older. It metabolizes in the middle of the night, and so it actually gives you a big surge of sugar at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, and so you're more likely to awaken in the middle of the night. So it doesn't affect everybody, so you kind of need to see if it affects you. Establishing a nighttime routine is really important, making sure you're not having too many naps in the afternoon and you're cutting off your caffeine intake. Usually after about noon, this slide says 2 o'clock, but after about noon, we shouldn't be having any caffeine. Create a routine, go to bed at the same time every night, get up at the same time every morning, even on the weekends. So if you feel you have to catch up on the weekends, you're in sleep deficit. You're not getting enough sleep during the week. So create a routine where you're going to bed at the same time, you're waking up at the same time. This is the aha moment of all college students when they finally graduate from college, right? And they figure out that, wow, all those years of not getting, appropriate sleep really took its toll on me. And my kids after college realized how important a sleep routine really was. And then the blue lights, put those cell phones away, put them in a different room, put it in your bathroom, but you don't want the blue lights from your cell phone or television to wake you up. Some people too, what they're seeing on television before they go to sleep, you want about an hour between the time you finish watching television, look at your iPad, look at your cell phone, and when you go to sleep. So the other component that I was talking about is what I tell my especially my college students, is the spirit, to really find something that helps you maintain this spiritual balance, whether it's yoga, meditation, mindfulness practices. If you have a religious practice, practice it. And what comes from that is this, the fruits of the practice are what we alluded to earlier, which is having a sense of purpose, passion, gratitude, forgiveness. And that comes from giving yourself the time to be in a spiritual place, whatever that looks like for you. So I'm going to just introduce the village. Dr. Bartner's going to really take this on, but this is really important, especially we saw it during COVID, and we all aged during COVID because we really lost our sense of social connection and our sense of belonging. And so this is something that I really can't impress upon all of us, is to just find your people and spend time with them in whatever capacity that is. I mean, it may be a pain in the rear to live with your daughter-in-law and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, but I will tell you, my patients that are 95, 100, they live in multiple generations in their home. They feel connected. They feel like they belong and that they're contributing to their family. So Dr. Bartner is going to take on happy retirement. These are just some little tidbits, and Dr. Lurie is going to introduce Dr. Bartner.
I have to admit, I'll take a minute. First of all, I want to thank these guys. Your speeches that should be given to all med students and doctors in practice. As far as this, the music, I have to, I'm going to talk about myself for a second. It's got nothing to do with this, but I'm a marching band groupie. My wife knows that. Our dates in college were to watch the band practice. And she still married me, knowing what a nerd I was. But one of the things I just learned, and I hope you appreciate it, I mean, the music gets to me. 42 years ago, I started working as a cardiologist at the athletic department at SC. And like I said, nobody has a cardiologist there, so I was kind of a useless guy walking around. But before the game, every game out, and I was at the Coliseum for on the field, I would see this gray-haired guy, not gray at the beginning, handling that band. I love the band. I love the fight-on part. And he'd run from one end to the other, and that guy stayed in shape to be able to then conduct for the Star Spangled Banner. But I just want you all to appreciate, I'm not sure how much you'll get into it, how much the band works. I mean, you think about these steps and the songs, and who's teaching them? But they have a master there, like 50 years doing that. You know, how do you learn the songs one week and then the next week? Then you have to go up to Cal and do it and march and then remember the steps. And all we think about, the football team is working their ass off and we're reading about it, and of course they're getting paid. These guys are working their buns off. And I'm really proud to be here and be able to bring Dr. Bartner here. So I don't want to take a lot of time. I know parts of Dr. Bartner's history that are critical to me, and it's all the music, but he was from New Jersey. He marched in the Michigan band. God forbid, I'm from Ohio State, but he played, that too was one of the major bands, and it still is. When I went to Ohio State, it was the Battle of the Bands, but he marched in that. I mean, what a background. And then he went through other things, but then came out to SC 50 plus years ago and created a band that is still world renowned. I mean, whether they sing they did Tusk, they've been in movies, they're in all the parades. And that, we don't appreciate that. We just see them there and you don't realize, I realize what Bartner has done. So that's why I'm so proud to have brought him here. And he's been at 50 years. He made my life a lot more fun at the football games. I'm not an athlete. I wasn't as impressed with the football games. That's the one thing. No matter where I went to school, we had some bad years in football, some good years. We always, and at SC, straight through, my whole time, has been a phenomenal band. So this guy, yes, he is a doctor. He's a doctor of band music. I'm so proud to know him. We get together at lunch just to be able to talk about the things he's done. So Dr. Bartner, come on up.
After that introduction, I don't know what to say, except that when I was at the University of Michigan, over 60 years ago, we never beat Ohio State. So that's the reason why I had to come out to USC and play them in the Rose Bowl so we could beat Ohio State. Oh, I took your first question away. Okay. It's great to be here, and this is a tight-knit family over here. Our kids, excuse me. Well, my grandkids. See, now I'm the only speaker that's your age. And, excuse me, Mark. And I can relate to all these things. And my grandkids were playing ball or in a sorority or whatever with their children. So you can see the generation gap here, and just a wonderful family we have going on over here. Anyway, I'll go back to my notes here so I know what I'm saying. But I marched in the Michigan marching band, the late 50s, early 60s. And it was a great time. It was a great time. The big house, 110,000 people. the football team was definitely not up to the level of the marching band. Anyway, I arrived at USC in 1970. And after many television shows and movies and Fleetwood Mac and the '84 Olympics and all these wonderful things, I finally retired after 50 years. I was having too much fun. Why retire if you're having a fun time running around with college kids all day? So, in fact, Dr. Malor mentioned about having a spirit. You know, I'll always have this spirit. You know, I don't know how many years we're all going to live, but I will always have this spirit, this attitude, because this is what I've preached to the band for 50 years. It's, you know, when you go out in that field, when you put on the cardinal and gold, when you pick up that trumpet, it doesn't, and we had some rough years in football. I don't want to mention names, but we had a coach named Paul Hackett. But anyway, you know, I'm not here going to talk about that. But I always taught the band, you know, it doesn't matter if you win, you lose, whatever the elements are, we're still Trojan. You put the cardinal and gold on, you represent something bigger than yourselves. And so, you know, that was my philosophy. And so I guess I have this spirit within me. No matter what the adversity is, I always have this spirit. Anyway, so what I'm going to do in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to take you through a typical day of Dr. Arthur C. Bartner. By the way, my doctor was in music education. I'm a kind of underqualified for this group. But you know, here's what I do on a typical day. And you'll see how this matches up with what you've just heard. First of all, I get up in the morning and I stretch. First thing. Why? I've watched the football team stretch for 50 years before they play a football game. The band stretches before every practice. Why? It gets the muscles going, you know, so you can get through the day. I have to check my notes here a second. For me, it gets the breath going to the achy parts of your body. I have a chronic neck injury, and it's not an injury. It's just how when you conduct, and you're the gridiron, and you've got 300 kids out there, you're always reaching out. You know, some kids you want to grab and move them to the right spot, but you're always reaching out. So every morning I tell my breath to go to my neck, and it really works. Anyway, so it wakes me up and it gets my core going. The core is a big deal. I was a trumpet player. Breath is a big deal. How you activate the core is really a big deal. Posture, which I work on all the time, goes back to the core. So that's what I do in the morning. Well, the next thing I do in the morning is I eat breakfast. And this is Dr. Malor's gig here. No more banned food for me. I've spent my life eating banned food because you buy food for the band. You can't always say, excuse me, you know, I got to go, you know, downtown and get to the Palmer House and get something really good. No, you have to eat the band food. No In-N-Out burgers, no McDonald's, no Chick-fil-A, no pizza. College kids love pizza. With the more stuff on it, the top, the better. my stomach has aged out. So I do not participate with that. And every meal has fruit, nuts, vegetables. My favorite are berries. Any kind of berry is good for you. Nuts, non-salted. Okay? My favorite vegetables are peas and carrots. Don't ask me why, but that's what, my wife puts on the platter. For dinner, it's fish, chicken, salads, and sushi. Now, there's no red meat in my diet. I am dairy-free, no dairy for me. I love salmon. I eat a lot of chicken. Chicken Maison is right down the street. God, they know me back. I walk in there and they say, "Hi, Art." That's when you're going to the same place too often when they start calling you by your first name. Anyway, sushi, I like tuna and California rolls. So that's what I have for dinner. By the way, I am 165 pounds almost consistently. When I played basketball in high school, I was 155 pounds. I've put on 10 years and 60, 70 years. That's not too bad. After breakfast, I get on my iPad. You probably get on your computer or iPad or device of some kind. And I check my emails, I answer them, my texts, I read articles, and again, this is kind of a review of everything that went on before, but it gets my brain focused. It gets my brain working. And so, and I like things like politics, and I'm not going to get into that subject. World news. I read a lot of articles on health and happy lifestyles. Obviously, I'm interested in sports, and I'm also interested in what's going on at USC. I stay in touch with my successor, who was my student for 10 years. And the next topic, I'm going to talk about all the alumni that I still stay in contact with. When it comes to USC, it's very important to keep your blood pressure under control. Okay, so now it's lunchtime, and I go out with a band alumnus at least once a week. Now, there's 4,000 of them all over the country, so I'm never short with band alumnus. Now, out of that 4,000, there's only about 500 or so that are active. And this to me is very important, because what Dr. Malor calls a village, I've always said to run a marching band, it takes a village, because you need an arranger, a choreographer, a flag instructor, a drum instructor. I mean, it's a village to produce what you see on game day. Now, I call it a community. You need a community that you're attached to. For me, it's the band alumni. And, I see a lot of them at homecoming. I see we're having a concert in the spring. I see a lot of them. But this to me is important because, and I say this in all sincerity, the guys that gave me the most trouble are now doctors. lawyers, teachers, professional musicians, and the poor souls that became band directors. I hope they're giving them what they gave me all those years. But anyway, it's I love talking to these guys because I'm proud of what they've accomplished with their life. I'm interested in their careers, in their families, and it's really a tremendous joy for me to meet with band alumnus. In the afternoon, Helene, exercise. Now, Dr. Laurie, he described sort of what I do with my life. I'm always waving my arms. I'm always moving, pacing the sideline, pacing the field, moving. I'm always moving. You listen to my voice. I'm always shouting. In fact, Pete Carroll, he used to always come over to the band and he used to bring them over. You got 300 kids surrounding Pete Carroll, and then he'd tell stories about me. And the band would howl. They'd howl. They'd be laughing. I couldn't run rehearsal after that. But Pete said he doesn't know how I have a voice left because he could hear every word across the street on the practice field. So anyway, the whole point is exercise is very important to me. I have 2 trainers, one at Equinox up on the hill, and she's in charge of strength building. My son, Steve, said, it's very important that you build your strength or you don't lose it. And I'm on ropes, cables, dumbbells, kettles. I'm on all these, to keep my interest, I'm on all these what I call toys. I'm on these things. And then I'm on every machine that I can handle. And by the way, I put the lowest weight, but it's the motion. Whatever you're doing, it's the motion that keeps your body physically adapt. So the second trainer comes to my house, and he deals with stretching, he deals with movement, he deals with balance, he deals with general well care. And so I have these 2 trainers, and they're really, each one brings a different thing to the table. Now here's something that maybe our guest speakers didn't allude to, but after exercising is my downtime. Downtime is, and I'm one of these obviously A-type personalities, but it's nice to have a downtime where you get to relax and it's quiet and it's peaceful and this is your own time. And I drink Sustain, which builds up the electrolytes, and I treat myself to sorbet. By the way, desserts are out. I love going out with the grandkids because they sneak under the table so my wife doesn't see it, some coffee ice cream. Because once my wife finds out, then she starts yelling at the grandkids, and I don't like that. So the downtime is very important to me. And I have a nice view of the ocean, and that's very calming to me. So when your career is full of stress, and as you can imagine, football games are a stress. And I think next to the coach, I view myself as the 12th coach on that football team. In other words, I do and die for Trojan football. And the stress of dealing with 300 kids on a daily basis who they just had to write a paper, they just took a midterm, they just broke up with their girlfriend or boyfriend, they come to all these problems, and the band is like an extracurricular activity for these kids. To me, every rehearsal is a performance. I expect 100% effort every time you hit the gridiron. But these kids have all other, and by the way, most college kids are sleep deprived. Troy, my youngest grandkid, just graduated from USC. And I saw him on Sunday. Now, he hasn't slept Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and so Sunday, when I got there about 4 or 5 o'clock, he was still sleeping. So once he went to sleep, that was it. By the way, I believe in naps. I've learned on band bus trips to be able to take a nap. I do breathing exercises, and I'm out. 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, I'm up. And so I've kind of used to this. So I don't think there's anything wrong with taking naps. Okay, well, so that's my typical day, and it was a beautiful day, but something is missing. What is my purpose in my golden years? What is my passion? What do I have that replaces this Trojan marching band? The answer is I've become an artist. I've become a painter. Now, I've taken the gridiron and I've turned it into a canvas. I've taken musical sounds and turned it into colors. I've taken brush strokes. Well, I'm ahead of myself. I've taken the baton and turned it into brush strokes. As you can see, there's a tremendous correlation between music and art. So now, with a little help of my friends, I'm now going to take you through why painting has become so important to me. And we have 8 examples of the elements of art and why this has become important to me. Now, this is the unrehearsed part of this program, because I'm going to look at these paintings and hopefully I'll go through the elements. The important thing about this painting, it's all about nature. I have turned football games into landscapes. You will not see a forward pass at all in this painting. But what you see is flowers, you'll see trees. When I talk about colors, I love this because you start mixing colors. And if you want a blue tree, hey, you paint a blue tree. Who's going to be your critic? Except my wife. Anyway, this is all about nature. Trees, hills, mountains. There's even a little bit of sky, through the top. So this is the subject matter for me, is landscapes. You'll see later on, there's some seascapes. But this is what I love to paint, and it's all about nature. Next, composition. There's the sea right there. If I want to make a purple sea, I can make a purple sea. There's the sky, and, and this is, I guess, the creativity. I need this creativity that I can take this paint and just push it. By the way, I paint with watercolors. And watercolors is very forgiving. You could take some water and just get rid of that color, or you can overlay this color and then mix and then come up with a purple sea. But this is kind of has memories for me. If you've been on the Italian Riviera, Cinque Terre, this is kind of what these buildings look by as you go by on a boat. So the next element after subject is composition. I don't know if there's any Stephen Sondheim fans in the crowd. Yeah, you got to be a Broadway baby to dig that. Anyway, Stephen Sondheim, in his show Sunday in the Park with George, said composition, painting, is giving order to the whole. And here, okay, now see, the sea is just way over there in the corner. The sky, not the sky, but now you got palm trees, you've got flowers. And so you have all these elements. And then for me, in all this nature, I like to put structure. I like to put something that grounds it. It might be a boat, it might be a house, whatever it is. And what's great about these trees, it locks the whole painting in, because you go from the foreground, way on the bottom, to the top. Composition. Anyway, the third element is color. And you can see that, the bright red, they're almost bushes in there. And they really, that's like the brightest color. By the way, your primary colors are red, yellow, blue. So I have all three primary colors: blue in the sky and the sea, red in the flowers, and yellow kind of beige on the beach and a little cliffs over there. So the fun part for painting for me is mixing these colors. Remember, I've spent my life in the band mixing trumpets with trombones, tubas who don't mix with anybody, but tubas who mix with the horns, clarinets and flutes. So I spent my life mixing sounds. So now I have the joy of mixing colors. Okay. Next is light. Oh yeah, I put a self-portrait of me over here. By the way, I've never painted on the beach. But the light is very important, because you have to know where the sun, the moon, if it's a night painting, artificial light, you need to know where the light source is. On the football field, you need to know what time of day it is, because it affects the look of the band, and it actually affects how they perform. So this is a sea portrait. A lot of the way the light hits the wave is a real challenge, to get it to sort of look like a wave, and the ripples of the water, and but the light is extremely important. Next is the texture, and the texture is really soft edges, hard edges, everything in between, and it's really how something looks and feels. And here it's this is if you've been on Big Sur, driving up to the Bay Area, there's a famous bridge that goes over if you're on Route 1, Anyway, so you have a waterfall and try to get the motion on a still canvas. Remember, this is just a blank canvas that you're adding painting to. But how to get the motion of the water is very important. So, and the texture of the rocks. Hard edges are on the outside of the rocks. Soft edges are, you want the colors to blend. The yellow and the beige, and you want it to blend. Brush strokes, I will demonstrate. If you're my band. By the way, the band is 50% women and 50% male. So this kind of, feels at home. But if I want a fortissimo musical term, big, broad, I might do something like that. Okay? If I want pianissimo, I'll go like. So brush strokes are the same. If you want, you can turn the slide. I'm tired of looking at waterfall. Now this is really a colorful, but you can see that you have different brush strokes. If I had I'd start pointing out things, but you'll see thin strokes, thick strokes, touches, Claude Monet, touches, fragmented brush strokes, sinuous, these branches of the trees. So you can see you have all these different brush strokes that I equate to how I conduct, how I would interpret music is how I conduct what stroke I would use with my baton. Value is very important. Value is how bright do you want this orange? Do you want it? It goes from dark to light. The best example is, as I alluded to before, I was a trumpet player. Now, if I was playing the Haydn trumpet concerto, I would have this sound. If I was playing big band Harry James, anybody remember Harry James? Yes. Good. I grew up with Harry James. Anyway, I would play with a big band sound. I was in a Dixieland band, I would change my sound. If I was playing a pretty ballad, I would change my sound. If I'm with the college kids and they're listening to hip hop, that kind of stuff, I would change my sound. So you can see different kind of sounds, different kind of tones. There's a lot of different colors in red. How many have been to Venice? Okay, not many. So this is the Venice Canal. A boat, this is a water taxi. But anyway, and this gets to, there's value, well, this gets to perspective. Perspective is on a flat canvas. How do you give depth to that canvas? It's through perspective. How do you get the feeling of depth so that this boat looks big, the bridge is the next side, and these buildings, it's all about perspective. There's two-dimensional, three-dimensional perspective, and this is all very important with the marching band because the band is on a flat surface. The football field never changes, but the audience is going from row 1 up to row 85. It's going from the end zone to the other end zone. So this is all perspective. to make the band look good from wherever you're sitting. Anyway, hope I haven't gone too long, have I? Anyway, and I paint. Remember, I had my downtime in the afternoon, and after my downtime and my sorbet and my electrolytes, I paint. I paint around 2 hours a day, from about 6 to 8, and then I have my dinner. Now, the problem, I don't know if it's a problem. For me, it might be a problem. But if I'm not happy with something, I'll go back after dinner. Now, my alarm clock is my wife. By the way, she calls me Artie. Artie, come up, it's time to go to bed. I look at my watch, it's 11 o'clock. But this is what happens. This is the joy when you're so passionate about something. You know, you sit down and you're concentrating so hard on something you love to do, and the time just flies by. And the good news is, at the end of the day, this is something that you've created. Nobody's painted I don't think anybody would want to paint the Venice Canal with green water. All right? This just happened. But anyway, there's no right or wrong way. This is my interpretation of this particular scene and my interpretation of nature. Anyway, Mark is coming up. But I have to mention my family, because none of this happens without my family. My wife and I have been married 62 years. And yes, for my wife. And she's put up a lot, because she's ate banned food too. She stayed in, grubby hotels. She's been on bus trips. So she, it's like, she deserved my allegiance. Anyway, she's been a wonderful partner. I have 2 kids. Debbie went to USC, Steve went to University of Pennsylvania and Linfield College. I have 7 grandkids. 4 went to USC, they had no choice. 3 stayed on the East Coast. 2 are married, 1 is pregnant, and I'm going to be a great-grandfather. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm not sure that he's transitioned well. But I feel a little inferior myself. I'll have to go home and have some insight. Anyhow, Art, that was fantastic. Thank you. And that really carried everything from starting at trumpet to being an artist, and hopefully gave us some awesome instruction. Now, there's going to be question and answer. I've been given some questions that were written out from the people on Zoom. There's a whole other audience, and I want to wave to them. I'm going to start with them first, but if any of you have questions, will we write them out, Sandy? Is that what you want to do, or will it be hands? Oh, Mary, okay. We'll hand out things and we'll get those questions. The first, Arthur. Oh, this is big. Arthur, we love this. How do we buy your net artwork? That's not what this program was about. I mean, this isn't an auction, but Arthur?
I don't really have an answer to that, except this is, by the way, the first public exhibition of my artwork. So you guys are the first ones to see this. So I will say to Lori, if she wants to have a silent auction to raise money for the foundation, I'm all in.
Dr. Lopes, we'll get you an agent, Art, but we'll work on that. Dr. Lopes, please describe what a 10-minute workout for weight-bearing exercise looks like. I don't know if you have to stand up and do it or what.
So would this be the 10 minutes of the 30 minutes that you do a day? It just depends. Again, you have to look at yourself and say, what can I do? Do I have injuries? Do I have problems? But the most important, using your own body weight is actually the number, you should do that first before anything. And what I would do initially is balance. I would do the balance exercises that I said. And then as you can build resistance, that's great. But our feet need to be on the ground to do our exercises. There's all sorts of bands and wonderful exercises you can do. But if I was going to spend that 10 minutes, I would do the exercises that I talked about with balance, 1 foot, play catch on 1 foot, those things.
Okay. Play catch, yeah. Helene, what type of exercise do you recommend for people with mobility issues due to prior health issues such as stroke?
What happens with a stroke is that you lose certain abilities to do certain things. So I think that's kind of a general question, and Anna may have a better answer than I do, but you have to do what you can do. So if I've lost part of my left side, I'm not going to tell you to go ahead and do something with your left side. But probably, yeah, are you more cardiovascular or, I'm sorry, or resistance? Did they say cardiovascular?
No, just the
Anything.
stroke. They had stroke, and what's the exercise they can do for mobility
So-
limitations?
If you can do it yourself, that's great. You might have to do something that's not against gravity because you might have lost the strength to do that. So then you have to turn in a position where gravity will allow you to get that mobility back. Sometimes if like your arm can't do a certain thing, you put a weight in it and you hang it over the table. So again, it's going to have to be specific though to what the actual problem is. I mean, do you have any thoughts?
With stroke patients, I mean, there's active exercises and passive exercises. So you do what you can with the extremities that you can move on your own, and then you may need some passive range of motion. So somebody has to actually help you, but put all of the joints through movement, which is what Dr. Bartner was alluding to. Everything has to move all the time. So you move your head, you move your shoulders, you move your arms, whatever it takes, and anything you can't move yourself, somebody has to put it through the range of motion, or you're going to have stiffness and you're not, it's going to freeze up on you. You won't be able to use it.
Thanks, Anna. This is another one for you. You need your calculator. For a 150-pound person, how many grams of protein per day? You want my calculator?
So, that's going to get tricky, right? Because for 150 pounds, okay, so 150 pounds is roughly 7 or 80 kilos. I'm just going to say, so about 80 kilos. You have to calculate it into kilograms, and then you multiply the kilograms times. I use about 1.2 to 1.5. I do it in my head. So it's a rough estimate. So that's going to be about 100 grams of protein a day, roughly 90 to 100. And so let's say it's 90 grams, you do 30 grams per meal of protein. So it's 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilo, and there's 2.2 kilos in a pound. 2.2 pounds in a kilo. Thank you.
So everybody has to have a calculator at the table and in the kitchen, and you've made it, at least made it clear. I know that I know you must have read Peter Attia's book, because, did you? Then your other book was that. There's books out about this too that actually say exactly what Anna's taught us. It's hard to make, I'm sure that Art has done it, but it's hard to get that transition from our old ways. which brings up another question for Dr. Malor. We're really putting it on you. Can you highlight the advantage of vegan diet over vegetarian food, and is it better?
Okay, so this is a tough one because, so if you look at, so there's positives to vegan. Vegan means absolutely no animal products. So that means there's no dairy, there's no meats, nothing. Everything is plant-based. Vegetarian includes eggs and dairy, and then there's the other, which is eating animals and everything. There's a lot of good science that being vegan can have very positive cardiovascular and brain effects and cancer reducing benefits. So there's a lot of positives with being vegan, not having any animal product at all, less inflammation, less insulin resistance. The problem is that our society really loves convenience foods. And so what ends up happening is we're not cooking vegan, we are going to Whole Foods, going to Sprouts, and we are picking foods that say vegan, and we're not getting the colorful rainbow foods. So it can be a little dangerous to go vegan or vegetarian and then be a junk food vegan or a junk food vegetarian where you're not getting enough of these vegetables and fruits. So I tend to tell my patients mostly plants. So 80%, 75 to 80% of our diets should come from plants, our seeds, our olive oils, our whole grains, our fruits and vegetables. And then there's the other, and that could be your fish. Red meat isn't bad, but it needs to be very lean. It has to be very small portions. Lean chicken, legumes, etc. So I've kind of waffled between vegan, which I know has a lot of positives. It's less inflammatory and it has good health outcomes, but it's very difficult to do in our convenience-based society. And then we don't get enough protein. So you have to be eating a lot of volume of food to be a healthy vegan. You have to be eating all day long. You have to have 3 servings of either tofu or beans to be a healthy vegan. Is it impossible? Absolutely not. I mean, people do it very, very well, but you have to eat a lot. You have to eat a lot of volume. You have to cook. So I caution my patients to be not a junk food vegan or a junk food vegetarian. And so for that reason, I say animal proteins are okay, but in small portions so that you can get the total number of protein grams that you need. I don't count calories. I don't ask my patients to do that. I usually, the 2 things I say is get enough protein, let's calculate how much you need, and get enough fiber. If you're getting 25 grams of fiber a day, you're getting a lot of vegetables. You're getting good healthy food. So if you focus on getting enough fiber, getting enough protein, you're probably gonna, at the end of the week, you're probably gonna choose a fairly balanced diet. I hope that helps. Yeah.
What's your feel? Well, I'll just quickly add on, because of many of the articles come out about the Mediterranean diet. That seems to be the answer to everybody's problem.
Yeah, Mediterranean diet has pretty much won out all of the research, all of the studies from a heart disease standpoint, cancer standpoint, Alzheimer's and brain health standpoint. My dad is 91, has lived a Mediterranean diet his whole life, goes to a restaurant maybe once a year. He still gardens and does he just changed the front panel of his car all by himself. Does everything functional, has never stepped foot inside of a gym, but, has purpose. He gets up in the morning, he knows what he's going to do, but his diet has been strict Mediterranean.
I'll throw this up. Well, I don't think, Art, you're going to want to answer this, but the last question, how to deal with tinnitus after a cardiac arrest, and is it related? You guys are in practice, I'll give an opinion, but tinnitus itself, do you want to go into it rather than cardiac arrest?
Yeah, maybe you should. Yeah, we should answer.
Well, no, you were talking, anyhow, as far as you're feeling the buzzing or whatever in the ears, and then you get these problems with balance and getting yourself dizzy. Tinnitus itself, forget the cardiac arrest, is something that spontaneously can come on, can be a problem with your middle ear, and that can possibly be cured. But the cardiac arrest itself, that's not related. After a cardiac arrest, it's like a stroke. Any number of things can be distorted, and whether it's disorientation, whether it's going to be memory, cognitive, it's how long you're under. But the tinnitus isn't something we routinely think about after somebody has a cardiac arrest. There's a lot of other really major issues. Tinnitus itself is a medical issue. The only thing I can say is you always end up getting referred to another place and to another place. Ear, nose, and throat or otolaryngologists are the ones who often deal with it. It's very difficult to do. I don't think I'd want to relate it specifically to a cardiac arrest. I think you still need to be evaluated possibly by the ENT doctor and see if there's another cause. So I don't want to leave you empty, but again, cardiac arrest is a separate thing. That's going to be it for the questions. Do you guys have any subtle or any final instructions to all of us? I think this has really been educational to me, and I'm beyond aging, but I really do appreciate what a great job you all did, and Art, we appreciate the work you've done. Now we can get up.